Welcome to PandaAudioBooks, the perfect place for a huge collection of fantasy novels. If you enjoy my content and want to support my work, a small contribution via PayPal is greatly appreciated. And don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and hit the notifications bell to stay updated with our latest audiobook chapters. Chapter 1381, True Spirit Body. That's the head of a dragon. The head of a true dragon, definitely not the head of a mere WM. Han Li was shocked as he looked up at the gargantuan creature in the distant sky. The massive head in the sky was completely identical to the heads of true dragons he'd seen in tomes. Furthermore, the entire head was a shimmering golden color, as if it had been constructed entirely from gold. There were also a couple of tree-like golden horns on its head, and it was quite an intimidating being to behold. But it's not a true dragon. Its aura does indeed possess the might of a true dragon, but the spiritual power within its body is only comparable to a mid-body integration demonic cultivator at most. How could a true spirit-level being possess such paltry spiritual power? Yi Chu exclaimed. A cold light flashed through Yi Ying's eyes upon hearing Yi Chu's words, and she murmured to herself, "It's not a true spirit-level being, but it can reveal the body of a true dragon, which means it's forcibly activating the blood of a true dragon, thereby allowing it to manifest such a form." The blood of a true dragon? Then the Long family must be involved here. Yi Chu's brows furrowed with a cold expression. That is indeed most likely the case. I've always found it strange that the young master of the Long family was assigned this mission not long after I was assigned the same mission. It looks like he's coming after me, Yi Ying chuckled coldly. He's coming after you, young mistress? Could it be because of that rumor? A thought occurred to Yi Chu, and a stunned look appeared on her face. What rumor? After activating his great development technique, Han Li had finally recovered from that indescribable sense of intimidation, and he turned to Yi Ying with a dark expression. All you have to know is that the young master of the Long family is behind this, and that is after the heavenly phoenix spirit blood in my body. However, seeing as they've decided to attack me here, they naturally aren't intending to let me escape alive. Our true spirit families had set up an agreement long ago, strictly prohibiting true spirit families from going after the true spirit bloodlines of other such families. If caught doing so, all of the other true spirit families would join forces to destroy that family. No matter how bold a young master of the Long family is, there's no way he'd dare to attack me in human territory, which is why he followed me all the way to this place before setting his scheme into motion. However, a deity transformation cultivator like him won't be capable of activating true spirit blood alone. It's most likely the case that other spatial tempering cultivators from the Long family have also come to this place, Yi Ying analyzed in a remarkably calm manner. After hearing this and thinking back to the special attention Long Dong had paid to Yi Ying along this journey, he was mostly convinced that Yi Ying had struck the nail on the head. I can understand it if he was going after some type of normal true spirit blood, but for ancient true spirit families like our Yi family and his Long family, the spirit blood has already been deeply entrenched in our family bloodlines for countless years, so theoretically, there's no way for it to be taken. The Long family should also be aware of this. A hint of befuddlement flashed through Yi Chu's grave eyes. I'm not sure what's going on, either, but seeing as the Long family is attacking us right now, I can only assume that they've worked out some type of solution to this predicament. However, even if that's the case, they'll have to be able to defeat my heavenly phoenix body first. I'll require your assistance to activate my spirit blood, Big Sister Chu. Brother Han, I'll have to trouble you to protect me during this process, Yi Ying said with a grave expression. Seeing as I can't detach myself from this matter, I'll be sure to assist you to the best of my abilities. A wry smile appeared on Han Li's face as he looked at the approaching dark clouds and that massive dragon head. All of them remained completely unflustered, as if they weren't wary of that supposed true dragon body at all. I'm glad you understand the situation, Brother Han. I'll set up a formation first, then activate my spirit blood to battle this true dragon body. Let's see if the power of our Yi family's heavenly phoenix is superior or if the true dragon blood of the Long family is purer, Yi Ying said as her expression eased slightly. She then swept a hand over her storage bracelet, and a thick stack of formation flags of all different colors appeared. She swept a hand through the air, and several tens of streaks of light shot forth in all directions before disappearing into the nearby ground. A purple layer of light had appeared out of thin air in the blink of an eye before circling around in the air above. For the time being, Han Li was unable to identify what kind of abilities this formation possessed. At this moment, Yi Ying sat down with her legs crossed at the center of the formation in a casual manner. She then opened her mouth to expel 5 balls of light, all of which were of different colors, and those balls of light began to circle around her body. Each ball of light was roughly the size of a human fist, and they contained miniature treasures of different forms. Those treasures consisted of a flute, a zither, a lute, a saber, and a ring. Among them, the lute in the yellow ball of light was none other than the lute of wisdom that Han Li had seen once before. He had witnessed the power of this treasure in person, and he knew that this was a rare spirit treasure replica. As such, those 4 other treasures were most likely treasures of the same caliber as the lute of wisdom. If that was indeed the case, then Yi Ying truly was incredibly wealthy. Just as these thoughts were racing through Han Li's mind, Yi Ying summoned a pristine white jade vial with a grim expression. She removed the lid of the vial, and an extremely pleasant-sounding phoenix cry erupted from within. Immediately thereafter, a miniature rainbow phoenix that was only around an inch in size emerged from the vial, then attempted to fly away into the distance. However, Yi Ying opened her mouth to blast forth a burst of 5-colored light, which immediately ensnared the phoenix. The brightness of the 5-colored light intensified, and spiritual light flashed all over the rainbow phoenix's body, following which it reverted back to a 5-colored spirit pill that was emanating a strong fragrant aroma. Yi Ying pointed a finger at the pill in an expressionless manner. The 5-colored spirit pill immediately flew toward her, and she swallowed it before closing her eyes. At this moment, Yi Chu appeared beside her in a flash and also sat down onto the ground. She then made a hand seal and opened her mouth at the same time, expelling a yellow pillar of light. The pillar of light was filled with extremely pure wood attribute spiritual qi, and it was injected directly into Yi Ying's body. Almost at the exact same moment, azure spiritual light began to emanate from Yi Ying's body, following which an azure halo that was several feet in diameter appeared above her head before slowly rotating on the spot. Not only was this halo of a remarkably circular shape, there were also white flames flashing along its edge, rising up to around a foot in height. At the very center of the halo was a humanoid projection seated with its legs crossed. It bore a slight resemblance to Yi Ying, but it had been shrunk down several times, and it also had its eyes closed while making a series of hand seals. The projection within the halo abruptly opened its eyes to reveal 5-colored light swirling within its pupils, presenting an extremely peculiar sight to behold. At this point, the dark clouds in the distance were only several kilometers away from them. Right at this moment, Yi Ying's skin began to take on a remarkably red hue. A layer of extremely vibrant light surfaced over her face before surging into the halo in a frenzy as wisps of light. The azure halo in the air above immediately shuddered before instantly being stained red, making it as exuberant as blood. As soon as the projection in the halo came into contact with this crimson light, it instantly absorbed the light into its body, and 5-colored spiritual light began to simultaneously emanate from its body. Following the vast influx of crimson light, the 5-colored spiritual light swelled and began to become more dazzling and piercing to behold. The entire projection was transformed into a piercing 5-colored sun. All of a sudden, the cry of a phoenix pierced directly into the heavens, and the halo swirled before completely disappearing into the 5-colored sun. Immediately thereafter, brilliant 5-colored spiritual light began to radiate from the artificial sun, and it transformed into a 5-colored rainbow phoenix that was around 10 feet in size. The phoenix let loose a clear cry before spreading its wings and flying directly toward the dark clouds. Along the way, its body swelled drastically, virtually doubling in size with each and every flap of its wings. Following just a few flaps, the entire rainbow phoenix had swelled to over 1,000 feet in length. An intimidating aura that was not inferior to a giant dragon's also began to emanate from its body. The giant phoenix appraised the dragon head amid the dark clouds with a frosty light in its silver eyes. In the instant that the giant rainbow phoenix appeared, the golden dragon head's roar abruptly cut off, and it adopted a solemn expression, as if it were preparing to face a powerful foe. The dark clouds and lightning flashed, following which a golden body that was over 2,000 feet in length was finally revealed. This true dragon body appeared to be around twice the size of the 5-colored rainbow phoenix. Even though the phoenix was clearly significantly smaller than its enemy, it wasn't fearful in the slightest as it flapped its wings. Gusts of gale force winds were swept up as thick pillars of wind rose into the air. Meanwhile, countless specks of white light surfaced close to one of its wings. Following a rapid string of spluttering sounds, the specks of light transformed into balls of white flames that quickly began to swell in size, forming a sea of white flames in the blink of an eye. As such, a peculiar scene appeared. With the rainbow phoenix's wings as a boundary, one half of the sky was filled with howling winds and violent azure wind attribute power, while the other half of the was ignited by a sea of tumbling white flames, emanating scorching temperatures that made the air shimmer and warp. Upon seeing this, the golden dragon's aura also abruptly became more chaotic and violent. Loud thunderclaps erupted from within the dark clouds up above, and countless bolts of lightning came crashing down. These bolts of lightning transformed into silver lightning WMS, each of which was over 100 feet in length, and countless such lightning WMS began to gather around the golden dragon. Just as Han Li was looking on from down below in a flabbergasted manner, the roar of a dragon and the cry of a phoenix rang out in unison. The golden dragon opened its mouth to blast forth a golden pillar of light, and the silver lightning WMS around it also immediately surged toward the phoenix. Meanwhile, the rainbow phoenix swept both wings forward at once, sending forth an azure typhoon and a white sea of flames in retaliation. Explosive rumbling booms instantly rocked heaven and earth as the two true spirit bodies finally clashed. Han Li looked on at the battle unfolding up above with narrowed eyes, but most of his spiritual sense had been released to the area near the formation in case any unforeseen circumstances were to arise. The silver arcs of lightning, azure gusts of gale force winds, and white flames intertwined with one another. Amid the clash of the three different types of powers, glimpses of the bodies of the golden dragon and the rainbow phoenix could be gleaned from time to time, and they were engaging in a physical brawl just as normal beasts would. Of course, their powers and abilities were far beyond those of normal beasts. As the golden dragon swept its claws through the air, it was able to easily tear through space, while the rainbow phoenix was able to make space twist and deform with a flap of its wings. Resounding booms rang out incessantly between the two creatures, and it was as if the entire sky could be torn apart at any moment. Han Li was feeling quite astonished as he witnessed this battle. If these so-called true spirit bodies were already this devastatingly powerful, then just how unfathomably destructive would true dragons and heavenly phoenixes be? The records on the tomes suggested that true dragons and heavenly phoenixes were beings that defied the natural order, and that they didn't even have to fear the true immortals of the true immortal realm. It appeared that those claims could indeed be true. Chapter 1382. Blood Crystal Mo Sword. Han Li stared up at the golden dragon and rainbow phoenix in the air above with an intense, unblinking gaze. The two appeared to be completely evenly matched. In that case, wouldn't this become a prolonged battle of stamina that could rage for days on end? With that in mind, Han Li cast his gaze toward Yi Ying and Yi Chu, and his expression immediately faltered at the sight that he was greeted with. Both of the women had their eyes tightly shut while maintaining a hand seal, and five-colored light was swirling erratically over their bodies. Yi Chu was still blasting azure light out of her mouth, which continued to pour forth into Yi Ying's body, but the color of her skin had already changed drastically. Her initial green skin had turned translucent and as pristinely white as jade. She had completely transformed into a seductive beauty who appeared to be in her late teens with a gorgeous oval face and a pair of exuberant eyes. Yi Chu seemed to have sensed Han Li's gaze, and she turned her attention to Han Li with a completely cold and emotionless look. Han Li could naturally sense the hint of anger in her eyes, and he gave her a smile before immediately turning away. Right at this moment, a peculiar crackling sound rang out in the air above. Han Li's heart stirred as he directed his attention upward again. In doing so, he discovered that the situation up above had taken a drastic turn. The gusts of powerful winds were transforming into blue spiritual light as massive translucent ice lotus flowers blossomed in the air. A burst of glacial power that could congeal the entire heavens had suddenly been injected into the battle. This burst of glacial power somehow managed to coexist in perfect harmony with the sea of white flames. In fact, not only did these vastly contrasting powers not reject one another, They presented an enhancement effect to each other instead, effectively doubling their respective powers. Flowers of white flames and blue ice lotus flowers intertwined, spreading over virtually the entire sky and forcing back the lightning WMS at a steady rate. The Rainbow Phoenix had unleashed some kind of strange technique to convert the power of wind into glacial power, thereby allowing it to gain the upper hand in this battle. So you're able to convert between powers of the 5 elements. Looks like you've finally unleashed the yin-yang extreme mantra. Good, very good. This day has finally come. The golden dragon in the sky was clearly being forced onto the back foot, but not only was it not flustered in the slightest, it began to chortle with elation instead. You know of this cultivation art. A hint of bewilderment crept into the Rainbow Phoenix's voice as it faltered in mid-air. The Phoenix's voice was identical to that of Yi Ying's. However, the giant dragon in the sky completely ignored the Rainbow Phoenix's question. Instead, a burst of thunderous chanting erupted from its mouth, following which an astonishing scene unfolded. The golden light around the dragon's massive body receded, transforming into a vibrant crimson color instead. The dragon then opened its mouth to blast forth a thick pillar of crimson light. As soon as this pillar of light came into contact with the air, it materialized into a giant sword that was over 100 feet in length. The sword was of a translucent crimson color with a dragon hilt and a phoenix blade. An overwhelming aura of blood and gore was surging violently from the sword, inducing within one the urge to puke. That's the blood crystal Mo sword. To think that this spirit treasure fell into your hands. Could it be that you're planning? The Rainbow Phoenix was shocked at the sight of this sword, and a thought immediately occurred to it, sending it into a state of panic. It abruptly spread its wings and desperately attempted to flee the scene. It's too late to try and run now. A cold voice sounded from the dragon's cavernous mouth as it pounced forward. At the same time, its body shrank at a rapid rate, transforming into a streak of crimson light that was around 10 feet in length in the blink of an eye before disappearing into the crimson sword. Immediately thereafter, the sword tremored before slashing at the Rainbow Phoenix from afar. Faint crimson light flashed as a crimson sword projection over 1,000 feet in length swept toward the Rainbow Phoenix, traveling far too quickly for the Phoenix to be able to react to it. In response to the oncoming attack, the Rainbow Phoenix let loose a cry of shock and fury. Its enormous body appeared to have remained completely unscathed, but a crimson phoenix projection that was several feet in size had been forced out of its body. The crimson sword projection then swept backward, transforming into a streak of crimson light that enveloped the crimson phoenix projection within. The streak of light then rapidly hurtled backward, disappearing into the sword after just a few flashes. Brilliant crimson light erupted from the sword amid a dull buzzing sound. Meanwhile, the Rainbow Phoenix's body disappeared as specks of spiritual light amid a dull thump. Only a small swath of crimson light descended from among the specks of spiritual light, disappearing into Yi Ying's body in the blink of an eye. Yi Ying shuddered as she opened her eyes with an expression of incredulity and horror on her face. The blood of the heavenly phoenix, most of my true spirit blood has been taken by this sword. Yi Ying's voice was a little hoarse, and her calm facade had completely crumbled. The stream of azure light erupting from Yi Chu's mouth cut off as a frosty expression appeared on her face. There's no need to panic, young mistress. The blood of the heavenly phoenix is not that easy to take. It's only been temporarily trapped by that sword at this point. Even if cultivators from the Long family have manipulated their true dragon blood to enter this sword, they still won't be able to truly take and assimilate the spirit blood in a short time. If we can take this sword, there's a chance that we'll be able to recover the spirit blood and perhaps even take their true dragon bloodline in the process. After hearing Yi Chu's words of reassurance, Yi Ying finally recovered some of her composure. After a brief pause, she said, "You're right, I can still sense the existence of the portion of my spirit blood that was taken, so we still have a chance. Brother Han, I know that you're no ordinary deity transformation cultivator. If you assist me in recovering my spirit blood, I can promise you that the Yi family would be willing to do one thing for you as repayment, as long as it's within our realm of capability." Yi Chu faltered upon hearing this, while Han Li's brows furrowed, clearly hesitant about accepting this offer. Don't hold on to the false hope that the Long family will allow you to escape. If we're killed here, you'll have to face them on your own. Besides, you've clearly sided with us, so even if by some immense stroke of luck, you manage to flee back to the 3 human regions, the Long family will only continue to hunt you down. Only with protection from our Yi family will you be able to survive this ordeal, Yichu said in an expressionless manner. Do I have any other choice? Han Li stroked his chin in a resigned manner. Why do you sound so reluctant, Brother Han? There are countless cultivators in the human race who would love to establish ties with our Yi family. Yi Ying chuckled before rising up into the sky as a ball of golden light. Yi Chu also transformed into a streak of azure light and followed closely behind her. As the azure light swirled around her body, her skin turned green again, and from afar, she appeared to be identical in appearance to a wood spirit. Meanwhile, Han Li also rose into the air toward the crimson sword up above with his body enshrouded in a ball of azure light. Due to the disappearance of the golden dragon and the rainbow phoenix, all of the lightning, glacial lotus flowers, and white flames in the overhead had disappeared, revealing clear blue skies. If it weren't for the massive crimson sword hanging in the air, it would almost appear as if the battle from earlier had never taken place. Han Li was naturally well aware that his opponents wouldn't allow him to attack the crimson sword in an unobstructed manner. As expected, just as he was flying toward the crimson sword, spatial fluctuations erupted on either side of the sword, and two middle-aged cultivators who bore a strong resemblance to one another appeared amid flashes of brilliant silver light. Both of them wore brocade robes with their hair tied up using lengths of purple string, and the two of them appraised Han Li's trio with cold expressions on their faces. Long Yu and Long Lin. Yi Chu exclaimed as her pupils contracted drastically. Yi Ying's heart also jolted upon seeing Yi Chu's reaction, and she stopped in mid-air over 1,000 feet away from the crimson sword. She then swept her spiritual sense toward the two middle-aged cultivators, and a hint of shock appeared in her eyes. Do you know these two, Big Sister Chu? Yi Chu nodded with a grim expression, and replied, over 1,000 years ago, these two were early spatial tempering cultivators, just as I was, and we met once during a gathering between the true spirit families. These two are proficient in nurturing ghosts and controlling devils, and they're not ordinary cultivators. The fact that the Long family deployed these two suggests that they're intent on securing your true spirit blood, young mistress. Cultivators with such abilities are indeed quite troublesome to deal with. Yi Ying's heart also sank upon hearing this. The two middle-aged cultivators glanced at Yi Chu, and one of them chuckled as he said, the two of us were wondering who had been deployed by the Yi family to the Wood tribe as a spy. Turns out it's Fairy Chu. Back in the day, just as you were forging a brilliant reputation for yourself, you suddenly disappeared, and we always thought that to be quite strange. We can see that you've now reached the pinnacle of the spatial tempering stage. Looks like you must have encountered some miraculous opportunities in the Wood tribe. The two of you have reached the mid-spatial tempering stage in just over 1,000 years. That's also fantastic progress, but don't you think you're biting off more than you can chew by attacking my young mistress here? Yi Chu retorted in a frosty voice. Ha ha, our young master is about to succeed in his ploy, and is going to possess the true spirit blood of both the dragon and the phoenix. With such a brilliant foundation, he'll be sure to reach the body integration stage soon, so what's the point in bickering over such trivial details? The middle-aged man chortled with glee. Did you intentionally sell the yin-yang extreme mantra to me? Otherwise, even with the blood crystal Mo sword, how could the blood of the heavenly phoenix have been separated so easily from my body? Yi Ying interrogated with a cold expression. The two Long family cultivators glanced at one another upon hearing this, but they refrained from answering her question. That's enough chit-chat. With the two of us here, you two can give up on trying to reach our young master. Talking is getting us nowhere, young mistress. Let's take them down, Yi Chu harumphed coldly. Green light then flashed from her body as green halos radiated forth, within which projections of trees and flowers were indistinctly visible. She made a hand seal, and green light instantly shot forth into the air, surging toward the two middle-aged cultivators. The duo swept their sleeves through the air almost in perfect unison upon seeing this. One of them summoned an antiquated crimson book while the other produced an inky black scroll. One of them raised a hand and pointed at the crimson book, flipping through the pages of the book as countless crimson runes surfaced. Those runes then transformed into crimson devil projections, all of which opened their mouths to produce streaks of crimson light that hurtled toward the azure light rising up from below. Meanwhile, the other middle-aged cultivator unfurled his black scroll, and a gust of black wind whistled forth from within amid a swath of mist before also hurtling toward the azure light. As the crimson light and black winds intertwined with one another, keeping the oncoming azure light at bay, the opposing forces clashed and explosions rang out incessantly. Yi Ying's expression darkened upon seeing this, and she flipped both hands over to produce a shimmering golden saber in one hand, while a green ring appeared in the other. She waved both hands through the air, and the two objects flew through the air. Chapter 1383, Crimson Ghost. The golden saber swayed before slashing through the air as a saber projection that was over 100 feet in length. The other green ring let loose a clear ringing sound before transforming into a massive green projection, and it also hurtled toward the crimson sword. "Don't even think about it," one of the Long family cultivators yelled upon seeing this. He then patted a jade pendant that was hanging from his waist, and it transformed into a streak of white light that rose up into the air before manifesting a white barrier of light that enshrouded the crimson sword. The saber and ring projections struck the light barrier with a resounding boom, and the barrier tremored violently. Countless runes surfaced over the barrier in response, keeping the oncoming treasures at bay. Yi Ying's expression changed slightly as she immediately raised a hand and cast an incantation seal toward the golden saber. At the same time, she began to chant something, and brilliant light erupted from the saber as it slashed toward the light barrier. Her actions appeared to be quite gentle and harmless, but a massive saber projection that was over 1,000 feet in length abruptly appeared in the air above the light barrier like a heaven-splitting blade. The saber projection slowly descended, causing the surrounding air to tremor violently amid a piercing buzzing sound. It was quite apparent that the saber projection would most definitely vanquish the light barrier if it were allowed to fall. Right at this moment, the other Long family cultivator harumphed coldly and abruptly tore his own robes away, revealing a harrowing sight to behold. His body appeared to be quite normal when sheathed in robes, but it was now revealed that there were 7 or 8 fist-sized crimson ghostly heads chomping down on various parts of his body, squirming incessantly in the process. He let loose a sharp shriek, and 3 of the ghostly heads hanging from his body opened their large mouths before disappearing on the spot. In the next instant, 3 balls of yin qi erupted forth above the white light barrier. Within the inky black qi, 3 red ghosts with crimson hair that were around 50 to 60 feet tall emerged. The 3 malicious ghosts looked up at the massive sword projection in the sky and 2 of them suddenly transformed into a pair of crimson longswords, which fell into the grasp of the ghost at the center. The yin qi then swirled before disappearing into the 2 longswords as well as their ghostly wielder. The malicious ghost immediately let loose an ear-splitting howl as its body swelled to 7 or 8 times its original stature, reaching over 300 feet in size. It then raised the crimson swords in its hands, which had both also been enlarged to the same degree, and lashed out at the saber projection up above. Red and golden light intertwined amid an earth-shattering boom. The descending saber projection was kept at bay by the 2 longswords, despite the stark contrast in size. The saber projection was then completely vanquished and disappeared following the clash. In contrast, the 2 ghostly swords and their ghostly wielder suddenly crumbled without any premonition, forming clouds of red mist that refused to disperse. Right at this moment, a projection circled around in the air above before crashing down toward the malicious ghosts. In the face of the oncoming attack, the crimson-haired ghost at the center remained completely unflustered. The clouds of crimson mist swirled to manifest the twin longsword as well as their ghostly wielder once again, and it appeared that they were completely unscathed. The projection hurtled downward, but was easily kept at bay by the 2 swords before being swatted flying. Yi Ying's face paled slightly as she witnessed this from afar. She gritted her teeth and rustled her sleeve to summon 3 fist-sized balls of light that were yellow, red, and white respectively. The light then receded to reveal a flute, a zither, and a lute. Yi Ying then pointed her fingers at the 3 treasures in rapid succession, and they began to shimmer with lights of different colors again as they shot forth through the air. During this process, they fused as one to form a 3-colored streak of light, which hurtled toward the malicious ghost. However, the streak of light had only traveled through the air for a short distance when 4 balls of yin qi erupted up ahead once again, following which 4 more crimson-haired malicious ghosts appeared. In the face of the oncoming streak of 3-colored light, they opened their mouths in unison to blast forth 4 bursts of black yin qi, all of which struck the streak of light, resulting in an evenly matched impasse. Yi Ying's heart jolted with shock upon seeing this, yet just as she was about to unleash another technique, a crimson shadow suddenly appeared in the air overhead. The shadow swept both arms through the air, and 2 thick bursts of sword qi came crashing down with ferocious might. The red ghost that was situated on the white light barrier had torn through space without her noticing, and silently teleported to a spot right above her head. In a fit of shock and fury, Yi Ying's body swayed as she transformed into a streak of golden light, narrowly evading the attack as she hurtled back in retreat. At the same time, she waved a hand through the air, and the golden saber, as well as the green ring in the distance, immediately flew back toward her before launching a series of powerful attacks against the malicious ghost overhead. The ghost displayed no signs of weakness, either, as it swung its pair of swords through the air to protect itself. As such, Yi Ying was able to combat the 7 ghosts with her 5 extraordinarily powerful treasures, but she didn't have any spare capacity to attack the giant crimson sword in the sky. On the other end, Yi Chu had also released a dozen or so flying swords that sported an azure and yellow color scheme. These swords were currently locked in an intense battle against a horde of devilish heads released by the 2 Long family cultivators. All of these devilish heads were comparable in size to human heads, but they possessed no bodies, and were extremely sinister in appearance. All of them were blasting purple devilish qi out of their mouths, creating a vast expanse of mist in the surrounding area with a radius of around 1,000 feet. Even Yi Chu had been swept up in this devilish mist, and despite unleashing several powerful abilities in quick succession, she found herself unable to extricate herself from this mist in a short time. As such, she could only release a layer of protective azure light to shield herself from the mist. She cast an urgent glance around her, and her heart immediately sank as she witnessed the situation that Yi Ying was in. However, a thought then suddenly occurred to her, and she turned her gaze toward another direction, upon which her expression faltered slightly. The place that she was looking at was exactly where Han Li was situated. At this moment, he had his hands clasped behind his back and remained completely stationary as he hovered in mid-air. It wasn't that Han Li didn't want to join in on the action, it was just that there was a young woman in a black dress standing in his way with a hint of a smile on her face. She was none other than Xiao Hong of the Black Phoenix race. Han Li seemed to be rather wary of her, and didn't dare to recklessly spring into action. This is a matter concerning our human race. Are you trying to look for trouble by intervening in this conflict between our 2 true spirit families? Yi Chu yelled in a cold and threatening voice. I can stand aside and detach myself from all this as long as you're willing to hand over your heavenly phoenix feather. If you're willing to do so, I'll leave this place right away, Xiao Hong chuckled. Yi Chu's expression changed slightly upon hearing this, and she immediately denied, What heavenly phoenix feather? How would I have something like that? He, have you forgotten that a member of our demon race was also to the Wood tribe as a spy? He sent news back to the demon race many years ago, stating that the Wood tribe was in possession of 3 heavenly phoenix feathers, which could be used by a heavenly phoenix for resurrection purposes. Otherwise, why would a spatial tempering cultivator like you be willing to stay in the Wood tribe as a spy for so many years? Now that even young Mistress Yi has appeared here in person, you must have secured the heavenly phoenix feather already, right? Xiao Hong said with a faint smile. Yi Chu and Yi Ying both fell silent upon hearing this. Xiao Hong chuckled coldly before turning her gaze toward Han Li again. Brother Han, I know that you possess some extraordinary abilities, but it won't be easy for you to defeat me. How about we stand by and wait for the outcome of their battle to be decided before taking any further action? Han Li had naturally already gleaned the situation that the 2 Yi family cultivators were in, and following a brief silence, he suddenly chuckled. I really don't want to fight you either, fellow Daoist, but if I wait for that young Master Long to fuse the true spirit bloods, I'm going to be in great peril. Seeing as we were comrades for a while, I'll give you one last chance. Are you going to step aside or not? Xiao Hong's expression darkened, and her voice cooled as she replied, I'll have to refuse. Fine. Han Li abruptly stepped forward, and his body blurred as he somehow covered a distance of over 200 feet in the blink of an eye. When he reappeared, he was only several tens of feet away from Xiao Hong, and he raised a hand to sweep a finger through the air, seemingly in a completely harmless manner. Golden light flashed and a golden thread shot forth toward Xiao Hong. This attack appeared to be quite simple, but was actually quite troublesome to deal with. Han Li had only been able to unleash such an assault after unleashing his shifting smoke steps and 9 gale transformations to their maximal extents. Even as a demonic cultivator, Xiao Hong was still given a massive surprise by Han Li's wraith-like movement techniques. The golden thread was constructed from a burst of sword chi, and it was so fast that it afforded her no time to evade, nor adopt any defensive measures. In this urgent situation, Xiao Hong could only abruptly open her mouth to expel a ball of black flames. A dull thud erupted as the black flames were forcibly dispersed, but the sword chi was also slowed down slightly as a result. With this brief split-second respite, Xiao Hong was able to rapidly take evasive measures, and as a result, the golden thread was only able to slice off a small piece of fabric from the hem of her dress. Meanwhile, she had already hurtled back for around 70 to 80 feet. When she arrested her momentum and stabilized herself again, her eyes were filled with incredulity as she cast her gaze toward Han Li. Han Li withdrew the streak of sword chi without uttering so much as a single word, and at the same time, he laid a hand onto his own head. Grey divine essence-fused light rose up into the sky, hurtling toward his opponent at his behest. At the same time, he pressed the palm of his other hand into empty air, and 5 white skulls immediately appeared around Xiao Hong. The 5 skulls opened their mouths to blast forth 5 types of glacial flames of different colors, all of which immediately combined to form a sea of 5 colored flames. After doing all that, a thunderclap erupted from Han Li's back as the thunderstorm wings appeared. An arc of azure and white lightning flashes, following which he disappeared on the spot. When he reappeared, seemingly out of thin air, he was standing directly above Xiao Hong, and he swept his sleeves through the air to summon several tens of streaks of golden light. As soon as Han Li had sprung into action, he had unleashed a ferocious storm of attacks that crashed down like a torrential downpour. Xiao Hong was still slightly unsettled by Han Li's initial attack, and her heart was filled with shock and rage at the sight of the perilous situation that awaited her. Without any pause for thought, Xiao Hong rotated on the spot, and a vast expanse of black flames immediately erupted from her body, sweeping toward the 5 colored flames. She then opened her mouth to summon an antiquated black mirror, from the face of which a swath of black light surged forth in a frenzy, keeping the oncoming divine essence-fused light at bay. As for the streaks of golden sword chi that were crashing down toward her with ferocious might, Xiao Hong raised both hands up into the air in response, sending forth a plume of white threads that created a massive protective net. A cold light flashed through Han Li's eyes upon seeing this, and he activated his sword arts as the several tens of streaks of sword chi multiplied to several hundred before sweeping downward in a frenzy. The streaks of sword chi presented a vastly intimidating sight to behold, and they seemed to be threatening to puncture the entire heavens. Chapter 1384, Crushing the Black Phoenix. The white net of threads was quite robust, but in the face of such a vast number of attacks, it began to tremor violently in the span of just a few breaths, and its white light began to flash erratically, making it appear as if it would crumble at any moment. Meanwhile, the black flames were only able to withstand the sea of 5 colored flames for a short while before being completely overwhelmed, following which the 5 colored flames continued to sweep towards Xiao Hong. As for the black light emanating from the antiquated mirror that she had summoned, it was almost immediately vanquished by Han Li's divine essence-fused light. The divine essence-fused light continued onward, quickly inundating the mirror. The antiquated mirror struggled desperately within the vast expanse of grey light, but it quickly became completely dull and lusterless as if it had lost all of its spiritual nature. Thus, the divine essence-fused light swept downward without any further impediment. Xiao Hong was extremely stunned by these developments. She was aware that Han Li was far more powerful than his cultivation base suggested, but never would she have thought that he would be this powerful. It had quickly become very clear that she was no match for him. She gritted her teeth before rolling onto the ground without any further hesitation. Spiritual light flashed around her body, and black flames rose into the air for over 100 feet. Amid those flames, a proud black phoenix that was around 10 feet in size emerged. It let loose a loud cry that speared directly into the heavens, and it spread open its wings to create a white rift of light. The phoenix's body swayed before it disappeared into this rift. As such, the countless streaks of sword chi that had just destroyed the white net of threads, as well the 5 colored flames and divine essence-fused light all missed their target. Spatial abilities. Han Li harumphed coldly. Black light flashed from his glabella as his third demonic eye appeared. The eye fixed its gaze on a certain direction, upon which a thin black thread flew through the air and disappeared in a flash. Han Li flapped his wings at the same time and disappeared amid a loud thunderclap. Immediately thereafter, Han Li reappeared over 300 feet away amid a flash of azure and white lightning. Almost at the exact same moment, a dull thud abruptly rang out several tens of feet below him. Spatial fluctuations erupted there as the Black Phoenix was forced to reveal itself, stumbling in an unsteady manner as it looked up at Han Li with astonishment in its eyes. "Law Destruction Eye," the Phoenix exclaimed with incredulity in its voice. Before it had a chance to gather itself, a bone-chilling harumph sounded overhead. The Black Phoenix's body tremored violently upon hearing this harumph, and it almost plummeted straight out of the sky. Almost at the exact same moment, Han Li opened his mouth to blast forth a small azure cauldron. A crisp ringing sound erupted from the cauldron as its lid flew off of its own accord. Countless azure threads erupted from within the cauldron, sweeping downward amid a vast expanse of azure light. The Black Phoenix was aware that it was in danger, but its body felt completely leaden and immobilized. It could only look on in shock and horror as its body was bound tightly by the azure threads. Han Li's body swayed, and he abruptly appeared right before the Black Phoenix in the next instant. He swept a sleeve through the air, and a massive inky black hand shot forth like lightning, clamping around Black Phoenix's neck in a vice-like grip. At this moment, the Black Phoenix finally recovered slightly from Han Li's spirit-stun thorn attack, and it began to struggle with all its might. Not only was it attempting to thrash violently to escape the azure threads, a layer of raging black flames had also surfaced over its body. Those azure threads immediately showed sights of melting in the face of those flames. A blue light flashed through Han Li's eyes upon seeing this, and a layer of golden scales suddenly appeared along the arm connected to the hand that was clamped around the Black Phoenix's neck, as well as his face. He clenched his 5 fingers together in one powerful motion, sending an immense force surging into the Phoenix's throat. The Phoenix was struggling valiantly a moment ago, but it almost passed out from Han Li's strangulation. Han Li then let loose a loud cry, causing the air around him to tremor and ring. Immediately thereafter, he abruptly flapped his wings, and he hurtled toward the ground like a shooting star with the Black Phoenix's neck still caught firmly in his grasp. The Black Phoenix was completely at Han Li's mercy and powerless to resist. Moments later, an earth-shattering boom erupted as the figurative shooting star crashed violently into the ground, creating a massive crater that was over 100 feet in size. Azure light flashed as Han Li appeared in the air above the crater. At the very center of the crater, the Black Phoenix was lying limply at the bottom in a completely stationary manner. Even though Xiao Hong possessed the powerful body of a demon beast, she still completely passed out after copping such a heavy blow. Han Li looked down at the Black Phoenix with a cold and contemplative expression for a while, but decided against taking Xiao Hong's life in the end. Instead, he made a grabbing motion down below, following which white light flashed from the Black Phoenix's body, and a storage bracelet was drawn into Han Li's grasp. He flicked the 5 fingers on his other hand, and several talismans shot forth before disappearing into the Black Phoenix's body. He then pressed his hand into the air, and spatial fluctuations erupted as a small black mountain appeared above the crater. Gray light flashed as the mountain rapidly expanded to several hundred feet in size, then slowly descended toward the ground. Following a loud rumbling boom, the Black Phoenix was completely sealed under the Black Mountain. The massive weight of the divine essence-fused mountain coupled with its inherent divine essence-fused light ensured that there was no way for Xiao Hong to escape on her own. As such, she had been captured alive by Han Li. This process appeared to have been a rather lengthy one, but it had actually only taken Han Li the span of a few breaths to completely subdue this demonic cultivator, who actually possessed a superior cultivation base compared to his. As for his decision to leave her alive, that wasn't because Han Li was being chivalrous or couldn't bear to kill a woman. It was just that with other witnesses around, he didn't want to forge a vendetta against one of the 7 major demon subspecies. He wasn't part of a vastly powerful true spirit family like the Long family or the Yi family, so he had to act with caution. In reality, as a demonic cultivator of direct lineal descent in the Black Phoenix race, Xiao Hong naturally had more treasures and abilities than the ones that she had displayed. However, Han Li's blitzkrieg tactics had completely caught her off guard, thereby resulting in her being captured so easily. Otherwise, in a normal battle, Han Li would still be able to win, but he'd have to unleash a few trump cards in the process. A faint cry of surprise rang out from the distance. Han Li turned toward that direction, and was immediately greeted by a pair of astonished eyes. Those eyes belonged to none other than the middle-aged Long family cultivator who was using the black scroll. He was currently appraising Han Li with a shocked look on his face, clearly stunned that Han Li was able to defeat a late deity transformation cultivator with such outrageous ease. The other Long family cultivator also cast his gaze toward Han Li upon hearing his comrade's cry of surprise. There, he discovered Han Li hovering at a low altitude above a small black mountain. Xiao Hong's aura could be detected underneath the mountain, but it had become extremely feeble, and this situation also brought a hint of surprise to his face. However, he then immediately harumphed coldly as he patted a crimson pouch that was hanging from his waist. A buzzing sound rang out from within the pouch, following which a crimson ball of light shot forth into the air, heading directly for Han Li. The actions taken by the two Long family cultivators naturally also drew Yi Chu's attention to Han Li. She was naturally ecstatic at the sight of Han Li's crushing victory, and she opened her mouth to blast forth an arc of azure lightning that struck the crimson ball of light. The ball of light tremored and suddenly transformed into a massive ghostly head, pouncing toward her with a violent expression, forgetting its intended target in its fit of rage. Han Li was naturally not going to squander such a brilliant opportunity. A thunderclap erupted from his back, and he shot forth as an arc of azure and white lightning. Following a few flashes in quick succession, he suddenly appeared beside the massive crimson sword hanging in the sky. At this moment, the blood crystal Mo sword was flashing with a peculiar crimson light, and was encased in that robust white barrier of light. The other Long family cultivator's brows furrowed as he swept a palm toward Han Li from the distance. His actions appeared to be quite gentle and nonchalant, but a glittering and translucent hand of light suddenly appeared above Han Li. It was around 10 feet in size and flashed toward Han Li like lightning. Before the massive hand had even struck Han Li, a gust of fierce winds was swept toward him with such ferocity that he was struck by a sense of asphyxiation. Han Li's eyelids twitched, but he didn't release any treasures. Instead, brilliant golden light erupted from his body as he clenched his fists and aimed a vicious strike into the air. In the instant that the two fists lashed out, they transformed into black and white in color and began to flash with mysterious spiritual light. He was going to combat the attack manifested from a secret technique unleashed by a spatial tempering cultivator with his body alone. The Long family cultivator was ecstatic to see this, and he immediately injected more power into that hand, causing it to swell even further as it crashed down toward Han Li. Following the sound of a gong being struck, the seemingly unstoppable white hand was brought to an abrupt halt. Immediately thereafter, a crisp crack akin to the sound of chinaware being shattered rang out as the hand of light crumbled before vanishing as specks of spiritual light. Han Li's fists were held high above his head with golden light flashing all over his body, which appeared to be completely unscathed. The Long family cultivator's cold smile immediately congealed upon seeing this. However, Han Li had no intention of having a staring contest with him. He swept his sleeve through the air to hurl forth a couple of silver beads, which immediately swelled to around the size of large bowls. The two beads then flew directly toward the white light barrier, and indistinct thunderclaps could be heard churning within the beads. These were none other than a pair of the lightning beads that Han Li had refined. Just as the lightning beads were about to crash into the barrier of light, spatial fluctuations suddenly rippled in the air before it, following which an inky black ghostly arm appeared. The two silver beads struck the arm and immediately exploded. Two thunderous rumbling booms erupted as countless arcs of silver lightning shimmered and intertwined, instantly encompassing the entire area with a radius of over 200 feet. Even though the white barrier of light hadn't been directly struck by the lightning beads, it still tremored violently from the astonishing might unleashed by those beads, and it appeared as if it could shatter at any moment. A small portion of the lightning bead's power had still managed to strike the light barrier. Han Li narrowed his eyes, and before the power of lightning had dissipated, he flicked his 10 fingers through the air in rapid succession. Streaks of golden sword chi immediately whistled through the air, heading directly toward the white barrier of light. In the light barrier's current state, it would definitely be shattered if it were to be struck by those streaks of powerful sword chi. A monstrous roar suddenly erupted from within the lightning, following which a dozen or so black shadows instantly shot forth from within, striking the streaks of sword chi with unerring accuracy. All of the streaks of sword chi immediately dimmed before being reduced to nothingness. Chapter 1385. Transformation of the Weeping Soul Beast. The silver lightning also finally vanished at this moment. Standing right before the white barrier of light was a completely black giant ghost that was over 100 feet tall. This ghost had a pair of horns on its head, and its entire body was covered in black scales, creating a suit of natural armor. There was also a pair of fleshy bat-like wings on its back, as well as a pair of extraordinarily long arms that hung straight down to the ground, and appeared as if they had been forged from fine iron. Even Han Li was struck by a bone-chilling sensation when casting his gaze toward the ghost's face. This ghost's face was completely flat and devoid of facial features. Furthermore, its massive body was riddled with holes, and no part of it was left unscathed aside from its two massive long arms. It was quite clear that this ghost had withstood most of the power from the lightning beads and sword chi that Han Li had unleashed. Otherwise, they would have been more than enough to destroy the white barrier of light protecting the crimson sword. The giant ghost raised its head and let loose a shrill howl, following which countless bursts of black yin chi appeared around it before disappearing into its body. In the blink of an eye, it had completely regenerated to full health. A sinister voice suddenly sounded beside Han Li's ear. He experienced the horror of this faceless ghost monarch that I've been nurturing for thousands of years, you nosy brat. This ghost is no less powerful than I am. Ghost monarch. A peculiar expression appeared on Han Li's face upon hearing this. Be careful, fellow Daoist Han, faceless ghost monarchs are vastly renowned beings of the ghostly realm, and they're no less powerful than spatial tempering cultivators. A female voice was then transmitted to him, and it belonged to none other than Yi Chu. After witnessing Han Li detaining Xiao Hong so easily, a hint of hope had arisen in her heart. Almost at the exact same moment, the ghost monarch turned its head toward Han Li. Even though it had no eyes, it seemed to still be able to detect Han Li's presence. It let loose a low roar as it suddenly raised its arms into the air. Violent winds were immediately swept up as black yin chi swelled, causing the surrounding sky to dim significantly. At the same time, countless howls of despair rang out from within the yin chi, making it appear as if there were countless ghosts lurking within. Standing beneath the yin chi up above, the faceless ghost monarch swept its arms toward Han Li. The yin chi in the air swirled violently, instantly manifesting an unfathomably gargantuan black ghostly claw. The claw was over 1,000 feet in size, and azure ghostly flames were shimmering over its surface as it slowly descended toward Han Li. Han Li felt the air tighten around him as an enormous invisible power appeared out of nowhere, attempting to completely immobilize him. If a normal cultivator were in Han Li's position, they would most likely be powerless to resist this immense force. However, Han Li was able to simply disregard it. Such was the power of his current body. After letting loose a cold harumph, he rapidly swept a hand over his spirit beast bracelet. A burst of black light shot forth before circling around, then landing around 10 feet in front of Han Li. It was a small monkey with glossy black fur that was around half a foot tall. It was none other than the Weeping Soul Beast. As soon as the little monkey appeared, it surveyed its surroundings before sniffing at the air, following which its eyes immediately lit up. It pounded its chest with its fists as its body rapidly expanded amid a burst of brilliant black light. Following just a few flashes, it had transformed into a massive ape that was over 300 feet tall. The ape let loose a loud harumph as it looked up at the ghostly claw in the sky above, expelling a streak of azure light from its nostrils that struck the palm of the descending ghostly claw with unerring accuracy. An incredible scene ensued. In the instant that the azure light made contact with the ghostly claw, a black hole immediately appeared at the center of the latter's palm. The azure light then continued to wreak havoc, reducing the other parts of the ghostly claw to inky black yin chi before being swept up by the light. The entire ghostly claw was soon in tatters, and dissipated amid specks of black light. The faceless ghost monarch immediately grabbed the air toward the Weeping Soul Beast upon seeing this. 5 black streaks of light instantly hurtled toward the giant ape like 5 massive blades. The sound of air being parted rang out as the claw projections swept toward the giant ape. However, they merely disappeared into the weeping soul's body without having any effect whatsoever. The giant ghost couldn't help but falter upon seeing this. The giant ape completely disregarded its stunned reaction as it let loose another loud harumph to expel a second streak of azure light from its nostrils. The two streaks of azure light intertwined and flashed through the air, sweeping up the residual yin qi up above like a gust of autumn wind lapping up fallen leaves. The streaks of light then shot back toward the giant ape before being swallowed. A pleased expression appeared on the weeping soul beast's face, following which it turned its attention toward the ghost monarch in the distance. At this moment, the faceless ghost monarch finally recovered from its shock, and it let loose a cry of violent rage. All of a sudden, an antiquated suit of armor surfaced over its body, upon which azure flames were burning incessantly. At the same time, a pair of white bone warhammers had appeared in its grasp. Han Li focused his gaze on those warhammers to discover that they had been refined from the skulls of two massive demonic ghosts. One of the warhammers was sweeping up gusts of yellow winds while the other had black mist swirling around it, and Han Li wondered what kind of abilities they possessed. Meanwhile, the weeping soul beast paid no heed to the pair of warhammers at all as it blinked and blasted forth the two streaks of azure light from its nostrils again, both of which headed straight for the massive ghost. The faceless ghost monarch swung its two warhammers through the air, and a vast expanse of black light immediately surfaced before swatting the azure light aside with ease. The weeping soul beast's soul-devouring light had been dispelled by this ghost monarch. Han Li's expression changed slightly upon seeing this. The weeping soul beast also adopted a solemn look as it let loose a low roar. Yin winds were immediately swept up around it as countless arcs of lightning flashed in the surrounding area. The giant ape's body swelled once again as its fur began to turn red. Three crooked horns slowly sprouted from the top of its head while its glabella bulged before splitting open, revealing a crimson demonic eye. At the same time, its face elongated and it bared its fangs in a menacing manner. Three black bone spikes that were around 10 feet in length each also appeared on its back, and sinister black yin qi was swirling around them. The weeping soul beast had undergone a transformation into a sinister malicious ghost. The yin qi swirling around its body seemed to be even more powerful than that of the faceless ghost monarch, and as soon as the demonic eye on its glabella opened, a bolt of lightning that was as thick as a large bowl shot forth amid a resounding boom. The arc of lightning was as red as blood and instantly reached the faceless ghost monarch. An incredible turn of events then unfolded. In the face of this crimson arc of lightning, the faceless ghost monarch let loose a roar of utter shock and horror. It abruptly brought its war hammers together, and at the same time, its enormous body hurtled back in retreat, seemingly intending on fleeing for its life. Two muffled thumps erupted as the pair of white bone warhammers came into contact with the arc of crimson lightning. However, the warhammers were instantly reduced to plumes of smoke as if they had encountered the very bane of their existence. In contrast, the arc of crimson lightning hadn't been impeded even in the slightest, and it went on to strike the faceless ghost monarch's suit of azure flaming armor. The suit of armor met the same fate as the pair of warhammers, dissipating without posing any resistance. As such, the arc of lightning punctured the ghost monarch's chest before binding around its body like a spirit snake, then towing it back toward the weeping soul beast. The giant ghost let loose a howl of anguish as it was forcibly wrenched toward the massive ape's cavernous mouth. Following a flash of crimson light, the giant ghost was swallowed by the weeping soul beast. The mighty faceless ghost monarch, which was supposed to be comparable in power to a spatial tempering cultivator, had just been subdued and devoured by the weeping soul beast with ease. On this occasion, the two Long family cultivators, as well as Yi Chu and Yi Ying, were all completely flabbergasted. This wasn't some kind of insignificant ghostly minion. It was a powerful ghost monarch. How could it have been crushed like a papier-mâché structure like this? Just what kind of spirit beast was this shape-shifting little monkey? And what kind of insane ability was that crimson arc of lightning that it had just unleashed? The same thoughts were racing through the minds of all four cultivators. However, before they had recovered from their shock, Han Li's body flashed, and he instantly arrived before the white barrier of light. He swept a sleeve through the air, and 72 streaks of azure light shot forth in a frenzy. Brilliant spiritual light flashed as they instantly combined to form a giant golden sword that was around 100 feet in length. The giant sword only flashed once before striking the light barrier with ferocious might. A crisp crack sounded as golden and white light intertwined with one another, and a thin white line appeared on the white light barrier. Crap! Both of the Long family cultivators had clearly underestimated the power of Han Li's flying swords, and expressions of shock immediately appeared on their faces. Meanwhile, the light barrier tremored before crumbling with that thin white line as the center from which all the cracks stemmed. The white barrier of light had already been reduced to a very fragile state by Han Li's earlier attacks, and his flying swords were able to land the final blow to destroy it. Thus, the blood crystal Mo sword was bared to Han Li. He didn't hesitate even in the slightest as he activated his sword arts. The giant golden sword flashed before abruptly disappearing on the spot, but in the next instant, it reappeared and struck the crimson sword with violent force. A loud clang rang out as piercing golden and red light radiated from the two swords. The giant golden sword tremored in response, and was completely repelled. Han Li's brows furrowed slightly upon seeing this. He swept his sleeve through the air to hurl forth several silver lightning beads, but the crimson sword remained completely unscathed even in the aftermath of the beads' explosions. The slightly panicked Long family cultivators calmed down again upon seeing this, and one of them cackled in a sinister manner. "Ha ha, just give up, you nosy brat. The blood crystal Mo sword is ranked on the chaotic myriad spirit roll. You think you have what it takes to destroy it?" Han Li's expression darkened slightly as he scrutinized the crimson sword. All of a sudden, he pointed a finger at the giant golden sword. A ringing sound erupted as the giant sword tremored, then split up into 72 small golden swords again amid a flash of brilliant golden light. These smaller swords then manifested several hundred streaks of sword chi, each of which was around a foot in length, and all of them began to circle through the air. Immediately thereafter, Han Li began to chant something as he made a rapid series of hand seals, casting one incantation seal after another. All of the flying swords immediately tremored before dispersing high up in the air, then hurtling toward all directions. Amid a few peculiar flashes of light, all of the golden streaks of sword chi disappeared as if they'd never existed. Han Li had set up the aureate sword formation with the giant crimson sword at the center, planning to use the formation's astonishing power to force Long Dong's soul out of the sword or to destroy this spirit treasure altogether.